Wow, so we have a new law proposed in the Senate called the End the Endless Wars Act. That's a great name. It has been proposed by, unsurprisingly, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, and, new guy J.D. Vance, who's also quite good on the wars. But an unsuspecting addition to that trio, making it a what would you call that, a quattro? Mike Braun of Indiana. I mean, Mike Braun, I know who he is. He's never really been on my radar. I don't think of Indiana as producing great senators. I can't think of any good senators they've had in the past. Ending endless wars is a great cause, and I wish that every member of the Senate could get on board with it. I wish all 100 of them. I mean, you would think, hey, this is pretty universally popular. There is not even 1% of the American population that supports endless wars. It just so happens that every single person in that less than 1% of the population happens to live in and around Washington, D.C., and work in D.C. think tanks, the Pentagon, and the State Department, as well, Congress. And so, what does the End the Endless Wars Act actually do, other than just have a good name and make you feel good about Congress ending endless wars? Well, it actually repeals the 2001 Authorization of Use of Military Force, which was a blank check written by Congress to the Bush administration to start as many wars as they wanted after 9/11 in the name of fighting terrorism. This is the war on, the End the War on Terror Act. Remember when Obama got elected and we were supposed to not talk about the war on terror anymore? And he said, oh, you can't use the term war on terror. That's a Bushism. It's a Bushism. So if we just stop saying war on terror, then it goes away. Even though Obama started more wars in the war on terror than Bush. Many of those wars are still being fought today. In fact, there are wars that predate 9/11, which are now being fought or legalized under the 2001 AUMF. How does that work? How does the war in Somalia, which the U.S. has been fighting since the 90s, how is that now authorized by a law that was passed after the war started? So basically, the AUMF, if it was repealed, it would make all of America's wars in Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Syria, Iraq, anywhere and everywhere right now that the U.S. is just unilaterally bombing people, that would become illegal, not only under international law, which it always has been, because America was never attacked by those people, and starting an aggressive war. Wars of aggression are typically after World War II, this whole so-called liberal international order that America set up, that America has been in charge of. One of the first things they did was they said, you know what, we're going to make aggressive wars no longer legitimate. We're going to say, you know what, that's illegal under international law, and the rest of the international community should stand up and make it difficult for countries to start aggressive wars. You can't just invade your neighbors like Hitler did. Yes, it was acceptable for all of human history before that, but, Hitler took it too far, so let's just take this off the table. Let's stop invading and bombing our neighbors, or, in America's case, countries around the world. But since America wrote the rules, we, of course, don't have to follow them. So nobody's ever paid attention or cared that we break international law to wage all these wars. But if it's illegal under domestic law, maybe that'll put a little bit more of a hurdle in front of the Pentagon and the CIA and all these folks. Maybe they'll have to be a little more covert than they currently are. I mean, they're kind of out in the open anyway, even with the stuff that is currently illegal. Like when they were waging an illegal war in Syria against direct orders from the president, who told them, hey, get those troops out of Syria. They shouldn't be there. Guess what? The troops, not only did they stay, they kept dying. And there was a whole very sad story, but there was a congressional candidate who ran in 2022, sadly lost, by the name of Joe Kent, whose wife was killed in the war in Syria after Trump ordered the troops pulled out. So she was one of those troops, and she was killed because the Pentagon did not follow their orders. Now, I'm no expert in military law, but if you disobey a direct order from the commander-in-chief that gets your men killed, are you not at all liable for their deaths when they died as a direct consequence of you disobeying a direct order from the commander-in-chief himself? I guess that's a topic for another day, you know. America's war criminals never get prosecuted, so I guess I shouldn't even think about that. But if this law were to pass, the End the Endless Wars Act, maybe we would perpetrate, and by we I mean our betters, the folks in the Pentagon, the best among us, of course, America's finest, you know, the Raytheon lobbyists. Maybe they would be less able to commit war crimes in the future, even if we know they'll never be held accountable for the war crimes of the past. So, does this have a chance to pass? In my mind, no. Congress has no interest in taking away the president's blank check to start wars around the world wherever he wants, whenever he wants, because that would mean that Congress would then have to debate in the future wars. And Congress doesn't want to have to debate wars. They're not even debating the Ukraine war. It's just, oh, okay, we're at war in Ukraine now. It's just accepted. So, I mean, even if they repealed the AUMF by passing the End the Endless Wars Act, that's not going to stop the war in Ukraine. It's not going to stop any of the future wars. If they're going to war in Ukraine without any even a debate, let alone congressional authorization, declaration of war, anything, it's over, okay? Congress is meaningless, okay? This is like the U.S. Senate at this point is basically the Senate at the start of A New Hope. And what, didn't the Senate get abolished like 20 minutes into that movie? How did that all go, you know, with trying to roll back the executive power to make war for Mon Mothma? How did that end? So I don't expect things to go much better for Mike Lee, Rand Paul, J.D. Vance, and Mike Braun. But I'm still much happier that they are there and that they're making an attempt, that they are at least, you know, getting their name down on the right side of history. I don't know if they'll be remembered in the future. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that doesn't lessen the importance, because it shows that there is at least some dissent in this country. And that despite all this, you know, stuff that we hear about so-called polarization, in Washington, there is very little polarization. Washington, like the global world order constructed by the United States that was birthed during the first Bush administration, by the first Bush administration, I mean, you know, the 41st president, that new world order was unipolar. There was one side. There was no debate. There was only one position on every issue. Rand Paul, Mike Lee, J.D. Vance, and Mike Braun are the only ones taking the other side. And so that, to me, only means that things have to get much worse before they get better.
In 1932, Washington was under siege. The capital was surrounded by over 10,000 unemployed veterans of World War I from all over the country. Their only assets were the bonus certificates they'd been given after the war, which promised a cash bonus sometime in the future. They needed it now.
At the end of May 1932, nearly 10,000 bonus marchers occupied the nation's capital, and tens of thousands more were on their way.
I'm to get my bonus, and I'm going to wait for till I get it if I have to wait till 1945.
What brought you to Washington?
Why, to beat the Undertaker, spend the money before the Undertaker gets it.
I know who's made this country worth living in. It's just you fellas. Look, makes me so damn mad a whole lot of people speak of you as tramps. By God, they didn't speak of you as tramps in 1917 and 18. No. Take it from me, this is the greatest demonstration of Americanism we've ever had. Pure Americanism.
President Hoover was left to deal with the veterans when the Senate rejected their demands. The marchers had stayed, camped out in central Washington.
On July 16th, the last day Congress was in session, Washington was on edge. Thousands of angry veterans surrounded the Capitol. Near midnight, the 72nd Congress adjourned. Congressmen left through back doors and underground tunnels to avoid confrontations. The situation had come to a head. The president ordered the evacuation of the veterans from downtown Washington.
Now you bring in the troops.
When MacArthur moved his troops to the affected area, he knew exactly what he was going to do. And he adorned himself in his dress uniform along with his major aide, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
The force stepped off at 4:30 p.m. More than 200 cavalrymen spread out across Constitution and Pennsylvania avenues. Behind them came 400 infantrymen, followed up by tanks and armored vehicles.
The cavalrymen, one of whom is Major Patton, have got their sabers out.
The soldiers donned gas masks and without warning began hurling gas grenades at the veterans. The troops advanced, some jabbing with bayonets.
It's war, the greatest concentration of fighting troops in Washington since 1865.
I knew something was going to happen, that we might be attacked. And I had a press card, so I passed the police lines, and then I saw the soldiers advancing into the camp. And when confronted with this, the men all stood there and said, "Stand firm as long as you can." And they started throwing tear gas.
Tear gas was just burning my face. I was trailing behind my dad, and he kept hollering, "Come on, boy, come on, boy."
Marchers were choking from the gas, just like the battlefields in France.
And so they're being forced out of their shacks by smoke bombs and tear gas, hurled by the troops who have been called out by the President of the United States.
I've never seen anything like it. They systematically went down the line, burned up all the tents and all the possessions of the people there. I was thinking of Herbert Hoover when this happened, because his election was in 3 months. I thought this would be the finish of Hoover.
The orders of the President must be obeyed, and the roaring flames sound the death knell to the fantastic bonus army. In the shadow of the beautiful dome of the Capitol of the United States of America.
The veterans did not believe the country for which they had fought would ignore the plight into which the Depression had placed them. Many did not believe that United States troops would take the field against them.
By early evening, most of the marchers had been driven across a drawbridge that led to their main camp.
The president does not want MacArthur to cross the bridge. And MacArthur disregards the order. Eisenhower later says that he saw this happen. MacArthur says, "I cannot bother with pieces of paper during a military operation." And so he crosses the bridge.
All through the camp were scenes of panic.
My dad says, "Let's get the hell out of here. The soldiers are going to kill us."
Then troops began to set fire to their wooden shacks. One reporter wrote, "The blaze was so big it lit the whole sky. A nightmare come to life." The president looked out a window of the White House in the direction of the fire, then retired for the night.
And the roaring flames sound the death knell to the fantastic bonus army that ends so disastrously in the shadow of the Capitol of the United States of America.
The morning after the bonus rout, public sentiment took a dramatic turn against Herbert Hoover. If the expulsion needed a human face, it came in the person of Joe Angelo, whose story was published across the nation.
Joe Angelo gets the Distinguished Service Cross for saving Patton's life on the battlefield. The next morning, Angelo comes to the burned-out field to see Patton. And Patton says, take this man away. I don't want to see this man.
The BEF was broken up. The men returned to some city or other, there to roam the streets, hopelessly seeking work or to shuffle in bread lines. There they remain, crying examples not of the need for the bonus, but of the need for a new American system.
Mama, take this badge off of me, 'cause I can't use it anymore. It's getting dark, too dark to see. Feel like I'm knocking on heaven's door. 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 Well, Mama, put that gun to the ground, 'cause I can't shoot them anymore. There's a long black cloud coming on down. I feel like I'm knocking on heaven's door. I'm knocking on heaven's door. I'm knocking on